We are talking here on Mind Blown about conspiracy theories. And if you're just tuning in, be sure to check out the prior episodes of this talk. This is a very lengthy talk. And be sure to share the whatever hashtags may be associated with this work so we can get the word out about the harmful narrative that is going on about conspiracy theories and has been for quite some time. So, breaking down the narrative here, we get to our second part here, and I want to quickly take a look at the layout here. We've talked about how they redefine the term. We've looked at examples. Let's look now about how they identify conspiracy theorists. This is the part about the ist part, the way that they identify and get you to create sort of this ego around this issue. So we'll get into that here in a bit. So this section is where they have, I believe, the most potent negativity that they're going to associate with conspiracy theory. Very, very, very inflammatory, very potent, really the most sinister to identify this idea of conspiracy theory with the worst of the worst kind of people, as we'll see. So they're going to associate conspiracy theorists with violence, extremism, racism, anti-Semitism. Politically, as they're going to associate it with being right-wing, being a Trumper, a domestic terrorist, even. It's going very far, very fast. Not to mention the old ones still apply, the labels of crazy, tinfoil hatter, nutter, etc., 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 lunatic, those kind of things. So what they do here essentially is, I call it kind of a lump and dump. They lump together all of these different identities, and that's what they put in front of you first. They create this direct association right up front. We'll see it in the first paragraph usually is when they do this. They bring up a person who's, let's take a look. Let's take a look here. Here's 538, and it's an article called Why People Fall for Conspiracy Theories. And up front, they state that think of a conspiracy theorist. How do they see the world? What stands out to them? What fades into the background? Now think of yourself. How does the way you see things differ? What about the way you think that has... What is it about the way you think that has stopped you from falling down the rabbit hole? Okay, so they identify their audience as the opposite of a conspiracy theorist right there in the first paragraph. That's kind of a unique take I've seen on the identity thing. It's not what I just mentioned in the outset about, like, for instance, when they associated the Paul Pelosi attacker with conspiracy theories. That's the article, not about the attack itself or not about, anything but about his beliefs in conspiracy theories. That's the article there. So that's an example, but also identifying the audience. Identifying, even when you don't specifically identify the audience, as happened here in this 538 article, when you hear an identity, a label, your mind automatically comes up with its opposite. And usually it's going to identify with the opposite of what's being forwarded in this negative, extreme negative. Of course, they're negative, very negative things. But the label conspiracy, the phrase conspiracy theory is going to stick to that. So let's look at another example here, the conversation again. And here it states that Godwin's law posits that any online argument, if it continues long enough, will inevitably invoke a comparison to Hitler. This is Carson Phillips writing this piece, by the way, Gratz College. Perhaps there should be an updated version. If you examine any given conspiracy theory, even seemingly innocuous ones, it won't be long until you find coded and explicit anti-Semitism. Wow. Yeah. So he's going to say that even seemingly innocuous, any given conspiracy theory, of course, speaking in absolutes here, you're going to find coded anti-Semitism. In other words, anti-Semitism is spread by anti-Semites, and that's an identity. That's a label, okay? And they're associating conspiracy theories with that. This gives you an idea of the narrative. So CNN investigates, again, an article about Paul Pelosi, the attacker, and his multiple conspiracy theories. And they're going to talk about, here, get this subheading. Blogs show images of Pelosi, QAnon, and anti-Semitism. What? They've got images of QAnon? So he's not anon anymore. He's not anonymous, right? You got blogs show images of him? What does he look like? I mean, this is just extremely poorly written. I'm joking about it, but look at this. It takes 4 people wrote this article, and it gets even worse. So they got four people on this article, and this is their subheading. What does an image of anti-Semitism look like? Again, blogs show images of Pelosi, QAnon, and anti-Semitism. Oh my gosh. So they talk about how these two WordPress blogs that talk about conspiracy theories, anti-Semitic screeds, QAnon conspiracy theory, pictures of Pelosi, Okay, videos accusing LGBTQ people of grooming children, Okay, and then later on here they state CNN was not able to confirm that the 2 blogs were written by DePape. Yes, you can't make this shit up. So the headline of the article, alleged Paul Pelosi attacker posted multiple conspiracy theories. That's the headline, and then you get they were unable to confirm that the blogs were written by DePape. So, and it's also kind of this it's Facebook about COVID vaccines. He posted about COVID vaccines, the 2020 election, and January 6th, kind of associating him as a right-winger, anti-Semite, QAnon adherent, right-winger. Those things are kind of synonymous in the media narrative. And I'm not making any comments about, any of those things. I'm just talking about their narrative. But I think the point here, of course, with this guy is he was crazy. He was kooky. That's what trumps everything. All of this is just kind of pointless. Here's another article from the other perspective saying that, instead of kind of being associated with these right-wing causes and conspiracy theories, he was associated with left causes. This is from the Jewish Voice, writing Paul Pelosi attacker lived in Berkeley hippie house decorated with BLM signs and LGBT and other leftist causes. An American flag with rainbow colors and marijuana leaves was seen in his house. Berkeley stands united against hate was posted in the window. This is where the guy lives. And so we got 2 conflicting narratives about the guy showing you how basically, again, how over the top they're going to smear this idea of conspiracy theory, going to unconfirmed sources that conveniently go hand in hand with the narrative that we're seeing elsewhere, and then seeing like through another lens that, wait a minute, this is complete. I'm seeing 2 completely different images here, neither of which I think is completely true. Although this outlet reports about Michael Schellenberger's tweet saying neighbors described DePape as a homeless drug addict with a politics that was until recently left-wing, but of secondary importance to his psychotic and paranoid behavior. Okay, they seem very left. There's a picture of the guy. All right, so moving on here, the conversation reporting that an AI tool can distinguish between a conspiracy theory and a true conspiracy. Now, really, no, it can't. It's kind of a tool that they're probably going to use to smear conspiracy theories that they don't want forwarded. But anyway, the first paragraph of this one starts out talking about a handcuffed man who moments before had fired a shot inside a pizza parlor. That was the attacker of Comet Pizza shortly after Pizzagate came out. This article starts out again with a violent person, a gun-wielding, a shooter, an active shooter. Who knows what he could have done if he wasn't arrested, but it starts out with a crazy guy. Okay, first paragraph, Pizzagate, talking about Pizzagate. So Teen Vogue, again, Sydney Otis, ex-CIA. You never really leave the CIA, as the saying goes, but she begins her article talking about the 18-year-old white man who drove across New York State to a largely black neighborhood. This was the Buffalo shooting incident, where he shot and killed 10 black people at a grocery store. According to documents and messages the suspected shooter left behind, he had become radicalized into believing white supremacist conspiracy theories. By all means, we need to talk about this, talk about the Buffalo shooting and all of the related things about it. But here, the point is to show you that it's part of the narrative that you see in first paragraphs right off the bat, associating conspiracy theories with, in this case, a mass shooter. But mass shooters, violent people. Here's another example. So CNN reporting how to talk to insurrectionists and conspiracy theorists. So kind of lumping conspiracy theorists with insurrectionists, identities right up front in the title, the IST. And their writer here for this is a cognitive scientist who has been studying the drivers of political violence for the better part of a decade. My work has involved interviews, social network analysis, psychology experiments, and surveys of jihadists, white nationalists, and conspiracists. Okay, so so again, his profession is to, this is Nafiz Hamid. His profession here is to, let me fix this. It always goes out of sync. His profession is to look at political violence. And here he is associating that with conspiracy theorists. He goes on here to say January 6 insurrectionists, QAnon adherents, and other fringe actors are not the same as jihadists, but some findings on the latter are instructive. So basically associating conspiracy theorists with all of these jihadists, white nationalists, racists, basically, and conspiracists. He's lumping all that together. It's crazy. It's crazy. So here's another example. 11 most popular conspiracy theories in recent history. So the person writing this is Cynthia Miller Idris. And here in the first paragraph, an American University sociology professor who focuses on extremism and radicalization. So who do they get to talk to conspiracy theories but somebody that focuses on sociological extremism, radical people, extreme people? It's not a direct identification, but it creates that association, right? So here, we looked at this before. In the subheading, they talk about theorist. They push that identity aspect to this. Here is the conversation, the rise of a conspiracy candidate. And you've got the picture of Donald Trump. It's been a very popular, I think, part of the narrative when Trump was president to associate him with conspiracism, to identify conspiracists as Trumpists, as right-wingers. But here they also talk about the anti-Semitic angle. Conspiracy theories are nothing new, from 12th century anti-Semitic conspiracies to moon landing hoaxers, The rumor that people are being misled, da 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 da. So anti-Semitism, Trumpism, or being an anti-Semite or a Trumper is part of the narrative. Here again, associated with political extremism or being an extremist. Here is Time in an article, Conspiracy Theories Might Sound Crazy, but here's why experts say we can no longer ignore them. And they write, conspiracy theories, both powerful and enduring, can wreak havoc on society. In recent years, fringe ideas prompted a gunman to storm a Washington, D.C. pizzeria and may have motivated another to fatally shoot 11 worshipers inside a Pittsburgh synagogue. So again, we've got in the first paragraph the Pizzagate shooter, but also the person who murdered all the people at the Pittsburgh synagogue, a mass shooter, mass murderer. First paragraph. And again, conspiracy theories is the first header, the first phrase of the title of this, Time. Time has been instrumental to the CIA over the years in pushing their narrative. And here in the article, they talk about the FBI says conspiracy theories, quote unquote, very likely inspire domestic terrorists. The association with terrorists is being brought to the forefront in many ways, and it's one of the most troubling trends about this issue. But domestic terrorists, the quote continues, to commit criminal and sometimes violent acts and, quote, very likely will emerge, spread, and evolve, end quote, on internet platforms, according to an intelligence bulletin obtained by Yahoo News. End final quote. So yes, this aspect of... So let's move on here. The Economist, we looked at this article earlier. Conspiracy theories are dangerous. Here's how to crush them. All right, so in the first paragraph here, it reads that gone are the days when conspiracy mongers, and that's a little different than conspiracy theorists, a little bit more of a negative connotation, but an identity, a label. Anyway, gone are the days when conspiracy mongers, they write, had to find shards of evidence and contort it to convince people. Now, just their malevolence is needed. Oh, so if you're a conspiracy monger, you're malevolent, ill-intended. If a concocted scenario can't be proved, then perhaps it can't be disproved either. That is toxic for a stable society and politics. Wow. Okay, so that's The Economist writing. Again, here is the supposed threat of domestic terrorism coming from conspiracy theories or theorists. So the association with being a domestic terrorist, a huge kind of turnoff for people, as far as their identities. Like, I don't want to touch this idea with a 10-foot pole. If all these crazies and violent extremists are being associated with this label, that's as I'm saying, that's part of the agenda. Compare that with the FBI here saying that conspiracy theories are a new domestic terrorism threat. Well, we've got the mainstream media and intelligence agencies that are not only pushing conspiracy theories, but it's their job to be conspiracy theorists and to have conspiracy theories. So again, this is just ludicrous. This is, doublethink. This is a mind fuck is of propaganda is what this is. But it's also, honestly, it's pretty terrifying that, speech, something so natural and potentially beneficial, conspiracy theories, bringing attention to harmful conspiracies, can be labeled as the opposite, as potential terrorism. So it's pretty wild to read this. And even the FBI engaged in talking about conspiracy theorists. It says, it's unfortunate that conspiracy theorists and others are feeding the American public misinformation with the sole purpose of attempting to discredit the agency. That last part is kind of laughable. Like, this is in response to the Twitter files, and they're, you know, kind of thinking about the the whole issue in terms of discrediting themselves. It's kind of a childish, kind of defensive thing that they engaged in there. But in any regard, you see the identification being made, and I want to talk about this identification with, mass shooters and violent people, like people who commit murder and assault. You can't blame that on conspiracy theories. That's the person responsible. Their moral failings, they're usually pathologies, psychological. There's definitely a ton of screws loose in the mental capacity. There's some failings there. There's probably, trauma, horrible experiences in their lives. All of these things come together, but the conspiracy theory probably just got trapped in the middle there. It's not the root cause of any kind of violence. If somebody were to say a mass killer as a defense in the courtroom, say, well, look at this conspiracy theory, that's why I did it. Well, no, you can't justify violence with an idea. Only violence can justify violence as self-defense or imminent danger, and that's kind of a debatable where that line is, but that's the only justification for violence. So they can't make that link to justify violence with a conspiracy theory. On the same token, you can't refute or you can't condemn a conspiracy theory because of violence. You can't make that link backward to saying, because of this violence, we've got to broadly condemn this whole idea of conspiracy theory. That's ludicrous. But that's what they're doing. Absolute ridiculousness when you think about this. So they're using kind of almost the muddled thought of the person that would use a conspiracy theory to justify violence. They're using that same muddled thought in reverse, to condemn something that is a very broad category. So anyway, here's the point, though. Shouldn't we be talking about the conspirators? That's what gets lost in this whole discussion. They're not talking about conspirators in the narrative, in the media. Even the people that are tasked with fighting against conspirators. They're not talking about conspirators. They're not saying, look at the psychology of. I mean, you can find things about the criminal psychology, but it's not like a problem that's promulgated in the mainstream media. Like, look at all these conspiracists. Again, I mentioned earlier in this discussion that I look at examples of conspiracies. These are all conspiracies. Here, and let me flip through these. The Mississippi welfare scandal involving Brett Favre. This one in, I believe, India. Conspirators in killing, murder, terrorism, transporting illegal arms. We've got a conspirator here in a kidnapping case. The Christmas grid attacks in Washington. There was a conspiracy, 2 conspirators in that. I believe that would be like terrorism, right? 2 former tax preparers sentenced to federal prison for defrauding the IRS. This is conspiracy fraud. This conspiracy case is horrific. This is a conspiracy case involving abduction, destruction of evidence, disrespect to dead body, murder, rape. The charge sheet also has reference to suspected cannibalism. And these are 3 conspirators in India. I mean, the list goes on and on here. These are all conspiracies, and I got these within like a day. These are all conspiracies. We need conspiracy theories. Tiger Woods embroiled in some conspiracy right now. Sam Bankman-Fried, That was a huge conspiracy. We don't know where this goes. Funny thing about this article is pictured here is a man who's probably part of the DOJ, and he is a professional conspiracy theorist. Here, Yahoo, in their media, in this article, they're asking, they are conspiracy theorizing. Who are Sam Bankman-Fried's politically connected wealthy co-conspirators? That in itself is a kind of conspiracy theory. So this goes on. There's a whole bunch. You can find tons of these. There's about 36 articles coming out every day about different conspiracy theories involving actual conspirators. So why aren't we, conspirators? What's more dangerous, the conspirators or the conspiracy theorists? I'm sure the conspirators have, done 10 million times more damage to this world than conspiracy theorists. So with that in mind, again, referring to the ludicrousness of this narrative, I want to talk about the potency of the psychology here of the identification. Eckhart Tolle talks very eloquently about this in his book, The Power of Now. He talks about the mind-identified state, the ego and the fear of losing that identity, the way that your mind and identity have kind of fused with your belief systems and with these labels. It's why people tend to, they can't be convinced. If you have an argument, you notice that some people, no matter what you throw at them, they just will not admit that they were wrong. That's an ego thing. That's an actual fear of death. Notice it in yourself. It's very important to notice this and how powerful it is psychologically to have that labeling and that ego identification. If you say extremist or if you say extremism, people are going to think of, well, I'm normal. I'm a normal person. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm this, I'm that. I'm rational. I'm not a nutter. I'm not a crazy person. I am this. I'm not this. Whether it's, the positive or the negative, not, the opposite kind of conception, that's still an identity. That's still a solid identity that the ego has latched onto. And it's very hard for the ego to let go of that, to really. That's where you get cognitive dissonance. And there's a whole other side of the psychology here that we're going to look at that they're disregarding in what they push, with these associations with the worst people of the world are being associated with conspiracy theory, conspiracy theorizing, conspiracy theorists. Okay, so that is that. A couple more points about this segment here about identity. There's kind of an interpersonal sociological aspect of this. The people that you connect to, your friends and family, you want to have this. Let me back up. People are very concerned with how others perceive them. So that's another reason why these labels are very, very provocative. They create a kind of a social construct. It's a way, this labeling is also a way that, people can just shut down the conversation. It's people are scared of getting labeled and pigeonholed and especially slandered in such a negative way. And it's funny, some people are kind of embracing the label. It's kind of an odd phenomenon, but that's happening too. So, but in my estimation, we're all conspiracy theorists. It's actually a meaningless label when you think about it, because a conspiracy theorist, at the bare minimum, if you would sit here and admit to the fact that, well, are there conspiracies happening right now? Well, yes, of course. There's probably millions of conspiracies, big and small, happening at any given moment. We have 8 billion people on this planet. So that I think we could all agree on. It's pretty obvious. But that's the bare minimum. That means you're a conspiracy theorist. You're theorizing that there are conspiracies. And of course, historically, we know that conspiracies are everywhere entwined with human activity, human action, life. It's just a natural thing that people conspire. Let's be adults in the room and admit that, yes, people conspire. As crazy as it sounds, right? Remember those articles starting out like with the zinger, real conspiracies do exist. Really? Oh no, I thought that was just in the movies. The ridiculousness of this. You just got to sit back and laugh at it. But really, yeah, everyone is a conspiracy theorist. And there's polls out showing as much. Here's one. More Americans than you might think believe in conspiracy theories, NPR, and says at least 50% of Americans believe in at least one conspiracy theory. But what are the conspiracy theories they look at? They look at some ridiculous ones, in my estimation, like the one about light bulbs making you more obedient, the compact fluorescent light bulbs making you more obedient. So yeah, that's the kind of conspiracy theory that they're throwing out there and getting, large results. But it goes to show you, I mean, conspiracy theories are, of course, they can be real, they can be fake, they can be mistaken but well-intentioned, they can be weaponized, they can be absolutely legit, they can be well-evidenced. But again, don't give it more credit than even a well-evidenced conspiracy theory. It's not an end in and of itself. You still have to have an investigation, a trial, all of these proceedings. We need to bear that in mind when we think about conspiracy. This whole topic. That's a lot of what's being disregarded. The entire framework around debate, discussion, investigation, and research, all of these things in a well-balanced approach to this concept are being totally ignored in the mainstream narrative. All right. Welcome back